Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of the Daily Fix. I am your usual host and presenter, Advocate Tulo Hoyane. In a rare interview by a judge some 3-4 days ago, Judge John Musi, the Judge President of the Free State Division of the High Court, made some very interesting observations in the light of the damning allegations that were made by the KZN Commissioner of Police, Mkhwanazi, something like 9 days ago today. In that interview, the judge, president of the Free State Division, said that, to come up with allegations which have no basis or which are not supported by evidence or any tangible evidence, that is very dangerous for the judiciary. It can only tarnish the image of the judiciary and bring the judiciary into disrepute. In effect, what Judge President John Musi was saying is, if General Mkhwanazi has got any evidence, he must come forward with that evidence, present it, and the necessary processes would be put in place. In other words, if such misconduct involves a judge, such judge must be reported to the Judicial Service Commission, and appropriate action will then be taken at that level. He also said that at the level of the magistracy, there's the Magistrates Commission, and if anybody has got a complaint against any magistrate, allegedly because such magistrate is involved in corrupt activities, such a magistrate must be reported to the Magistrates Commission, and appropriate action will then be taken on that forum. It was a candid interview, and like I said in my opener, a very rare one, because most of the time, judges are criticized, but you seldom see them come back to respond to the criticism that is leveled at them. And Judge President John Musi was very adamant that the judiciary is not beyond criticism. In other words, the judiciary, he said, welcomes all forms of criticism, provided such criticism is evidence-based. In other words, anybody can hold a press conference and make allegations of any sort, provided those allegations can then be tested. In other words, they must be backed by evidence. I found it a very candid response, because in the light of what General Mkhwanazi has said, the potential impact of what General Mkhwanazi has said, especially in relation to the judiciary as an institution, are very damaging. Those are very damaging allegations. Because you see, the judiciary is an institution that must be above reproach. Now, if somebody of the level or at the level of a provincial commissioner of police makes allegations to the effect that, some members of the judiciary are involved in criminal activities. In other words, to be specific, they are acting in cahoots with criminal syndicates. How damning that can be, because it will mean the end of the justice system in this country. So it was a candid response, because, Judge President Musi was very emphatic that the judiciary is not above criticism. And it is a welcome development, because, sometimes there's a perception that the judiciary conducts itself in such a way that it sort of acts as if it is above criticism, or there is that perception that the judiciary is above criticism. And the allegations by, going back to the allegations by General Mkhwanazi, those allegations are very serious. We are aware at this point in time that the state president, Cyril Ramaphosa, has appointed or is in the process of appointing a commission of inquiry that will be headed by a judge, which will look into all these, issues around the disclosures made by Mkhwanazi. But the judge president of the Free State, in that interview, never even hinted or mentioned any process along the lines of that commission. In other words, he never actually, alluded to that commission. He was simply, daring Mkhwanazi to say, if, Mkhwanazi, if you have that evidence, report it to the proper authorities so that it can be properly be investigated. But we are also aware that there's a commission of inquiry that has been established by the president, and apparently it will give a preliminary report after 3 months, 6 months down the line or so. It will give a final report. Because in the first place, we need some kind of finality. It is interesting to see the judiciary come forward in this manner to sort of, clear up his name, because, these are very serious allegations and they've got serious implications for the administration of justice. But Judge Musi was very frank and said, well, if there's any evidence, let it be brought forward and appropriate action will be taken, because, like he emphasized, nobody's above the law, nobody's above criticism. But as we look forward to, the processes of the Commission of Inquiry into those startling disclosures, it will also be very interesting to see how General Mkhwanazi will respond to this sort of challenge coming from the office of the Chief Justice. In other words, will General Mkhwanazi, take matters a step forward to come up with names and name culprits, come up with evidence like the Judge President of the Free State Division has said. Will he come up with evidence, indicate who is involved in what sort of criminal activity, it be magistrates or judges? Because we need to restore, public confidence in the judicial system. Because disclosures like this, have that impact of, casting aspersions on the integrity of the judiciary as a whole. And what is a country without a judiciary? So if, our judges or magistrates, get, embroiled in this sort of controversies, the public loses trust in the judicial service corps, in the administration of justice, generally in this country. So that was a welcome development. I look forward to more engagements, by the judiciary along those lines, so that if allegations come, the judiciary must also, be in a position to respond, so that we get its side of the story, because most of the criticism that, comes up against, the judiciary sometimes is just left unattended. And if, allegations are made which, cast those negative aspersions on the judiciary and there's no, response forthcoming, the perception then becomes that, that acquiescence or lack of response in the face of the damning allegations would mean that, the judiciary might well be involved in those sort of activities. So it was a welcome development, and we look forward to how General Mkhwanazi will take up the challenge, come forward with that evidence, and place it either before the Judicial Service Commission, if it involves judges, or if it involves magistrates, he can then put such evidence before the Magistrates Commission. Having said that, let me thank you for watching this video, and let me thank you for liking and sharing these videos, and have a nice and wonderful evening.